peace, prosperity, and how about a little bit of decency? Unfortunately, all of those seemed elusive yesterday in that, what can one say? I mean, I'm still processing it. Remarkable, completely unprecedented interaction between Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, and Donald Trump, the US president, in the Oval Office. Now, yesterday afternoon, I was talking to my producer, Zach. We were just having a chat about a couple of things. And during the conversation I was having, Zach said to me, Ali, the vice president of the US, JD Vance, has just said that Zelensky is disrespecting the US and not thanking them for the support they've given. I ran upstairs, switched it on, and I watched this unfold. This mauling, this complete mauling, berating abuse unfold, first by JD Vance, then by the US president, towards Volodymyr Zelensky. And I tell you what I thought. I thought it was disrespectful, demeaning, and disgusting. Disrespectful, demeaning, and disgusting on their part to handle someone that they had invited to the Oval Office in that manner. Beyond reproach, in my view. It should have not happened that way at all. It was a complete and utter disgrace. I then took the time, because I was so shocked by this. I was genuinely shocked. I was thinking, am I watching an episode of The Apprentice here? I mean, this is an episode of The Apprentice where you then get dismissed and then you're going off in your black car outside in the cab like they do, saying, oh, well, you know, I think Donald Trump or Sir Alan Sugar or whoever it is, or Lord Sugar, whatever, has made the wrong decision. I'm going to actually just be fine. I mean, this is what it was like. It was like reality TV playing out in front of our eyes. And I felt very disturbed by it. I felt that they bullied this individual. I felt that he was abused. I felt that he was humiliated. And I felt sorry for him. I genuinely felt sorry for him. I then took the time, because I was so shocked by this, and I thought, I've got to actually see how this happened. Where did we get to this point? So I watched the 50-minute press conference from the beginning again on YouTube. And I suggest you go and do the same if you haven't done it, because it's very interesting. And what occurred to me was, and I still feel as I do about what I've just said, but what occurred to me was that Zelensky, his whole approach to this meeting was completely wrong, completely misplaced. He got it wrong on so many levels. And I'll explain why. Now, firstly, you have to understand three things when it comes to this. Firstly, the dynamics of a meeting you're going into. That's the first thing. The second thing, what leverage you have or don't have in terms of the cards you have in your deck or don't have in your deck. You've got to understand the strength or weakness of your own position before you enter any negotiation at all. And thirdly, what is your key message going to be, and in what manner are you going to deliver it? Now, let's take each of those three in turn. On the dynamics of the meeting, there was much talk of Zelensky not wearing a suit, and he was berated for that too by some White House press corps guy who was saying, well, why didn't you wear a suit? And I think President Trump, when he greeted him on the steps of the White House, said, oh, he's all dressed up today. And then Elon Musk, chief buddy, had the audacity to tweet all dressed up with a crying emoji. Look, Elon, you're a genius. Fair enough. Fair play to you. But come on, mate. You're also a slob. You really are a slob. You're not going to be in Milan Fashion Week. And anyone who's worth 300 billion quid or dollars going into the Oval Office as you do regularly, wearing a T-shirt, which is basically barely fitting you, with some weird kind of long coat with a cap on, I really don't think you're in any position, Elon Musk, to be lecturing anyone about sartorial elegance. In fact, go and get a tailor, go and sort it out. Jumping up and down on stage with your belly hanging out is not a good look, nor is waving a chainsaw above your head. So let's just put that out there for a second. So they berated him on dress. But he should have realized, Zelensky, that you're going to basically meet actors in The Godfather Part 4. Right? So 1 and 2 Godfathers were my favorite films. 3 wasn't brilliant. This was Godfather Part 4. You're dealing with gangsters. You're dealing with gangsters who want to be treated in a certain way. You are going into the court of King Donald Trump. Not Don Corleone, Don Trump. You know that. You should be briefed accordingly and you should act accordingly. If you don't want to play that game, then don't go. But he was completely ill-prepared. You've got to go and kiss the ring. And in certain cases, you've got to actually bite your tongue. And in the worst case scenario, you've got to be prepared, unfortunately, unpalatable though it is, to swallow horse manure. Yes, swallow horse manure in the Oval Office if you want to get what you want to get done. That's just the way it is. The king of the court of Donald Trump, he's the king. There are courtiers, JD Vance, Pete Hegseth, Mike Waltz, and these other hangers-on. The court jester is Elon Musk. That's where you're going. You have to understand what you're getting into, and you have to get your tone right and your body language right. You're not going in as an equal partner. You're going in as a subservient partner who's asking for stuff as a supplicant. Now, if your attitude is different to that, and you're going in because you've fought hard and you want to be respected, and yes, you have fought hard, and yes, you have stood and fought, unlike Ashraf Ghani, who scarpered as soon as the Taliban were coming towards Kabul. We respect you. I respect you. I mean, I've got my own views on NATO expansion eastwards. I've mentioned it many times before. But on a personal level, I do respect Zelensky for standing up and trying to do his best by his people to actually repel aggression. So fair play to you, Zelensky, but you're going into an environment where you have to kiss the ring and kneel as a supplicant and lick the boots of the US president. That is the way it is. You saw that and how it was handled by Keir Starmer. I think he did very well, but you could say issuing a second state visit was effectively licking the boots of the prime minister, of the US president. You could say that Macron did the same thing on Monday. Some would argue that that's just smart diplomacy. I think it probably is, actually. You've got to understand where your strengths lie. So I think it was badly handled from the manner in which the body language was managed and the optics of it. The second thing is, you've got to understand what cards you have to play. The only card Zelensky had in this whole entire conversation was around a minerals deal. That was it. Nothing else. Talking about security guarantees in the middle of the Oval Office, when you know that the US president does not want to offer any security guarantees, he's made this clear. He doesn't want boots on the ground. He hasn't committed to any air power. Why put yourself in the position where you are going to be belittled in that room by Vance and Trump? Why do it? If it was so far away, this potential deal, and if Donald Trump is in a different position to you, where he thinks this deal is basically the start of a negotiation about backstop or about security guarantees, of which I don't think they're going to be forthcoming, by the way. But if Trump's in a different place to you massively, and you're in a completely different psychological space, don't go to the meeting. Just don't go. Just say, sorry, I'm not in a position to go yet because the background work has not been done. Don't give them a chance to do this to you. So they were completely in the wrong positions to start with, which was the second thing. And when you've got very limited leverage, which is only rare minerals in your country, recognize that your leverage is limited, that you've got very few cards to play, and that you have to act in that manner. You can't go in saying that I want this and I want that, and Russia's the threat, and if they make commitments that they will renege on them, because Trump doesn't care. He's got an alliance with Putin. He feels closer to Putin in many ways because he feels that they've both been on the victims or the recipients of the democratic, let's just say, they would say malfeasance or unfair treatment on the part of the Democrats. So he also doesn't like the fact that Zelensky didn't help him in 2019 into this investigation into Hunter Biden's activities in Ukraine. So he doesn't like you anyway. So just be mindful of that before you start. And number three, what is your message? What is your message in that meeting to them? You're basically telling them that this is going to come to you too. You're not going to be secure. You've got an ocean between you, but you're not going to be secure. They don't want to be lectured by you on this. So the whole entire body language, messaging, the cards you have to make, it was all in the wrong place, And if anyone thinks, and I respect Zelensky for his courage, and I respect his people for their courage too. I really, really genuinely do. But I mean, this whole attitude on the part of Zelensky in terms of his approach to dealing with these matters and also appearing to be ungrateful is something that was mentioned It's been mentioned before. It's not a new thing that's been mentioned here. This has been mentioned in the past by Ben Wallace, who actually raised this issue some years ago, back in 2013. And I'll tell you, it's this, and I quote this. My counsel to the Ukrainians is sometimes, look, you're persuading countries to give up their own stocks of weapons. And yes, the war is a noble war. And yes, we see it as you doing a war for not just yourself, but for our freedoms. But sometimes you've got to persuade lawmakers on the Hill in America. You've got to persuade doubting politicians in other countries that you know that it's worth it. Mr. Wallace referred to the grumbles from American lawmakers about how we've given 83 billion worth or whatever. And we're not Amazon. And the minister, this is Ben Wallace back in 2023, said this. He also said that Ukrainians told the UK, he told the Ukrainians that the UK was not an online delivery service for weapons after he drove 11 hours to Kyiv to be handed a wish list for more kit. So this isn't the first time that this issue about gratitude has been raised. Look, when you're dealing with gangsters, you have to treat them in the way they want to be treated. Otherwise, don't go. Realise your own limitations. Realise the fact that you've got very limited cards to play. And realise the fact that the message you give has to be clear and crisp. And if you're not prepared to do it, don't be there. Now, I spent most of my career, bulk of my career in the City of London, engaging in multiple transactions with some of the biggest equity investors in the world. One deal I did many years ago, I remember it distinctly, was with a very, very large huge equity investor in the infrastructure sector. And I remember those deal discussions very well. And one of my colleagues at the time was front and center amongst this bank group. It was a syndicated group of banks. We were all lending a lot of money. And he was getting a bit too cute with the client, berating the client. And actually, the points he was making were absolutely valid and fair. But he was the only one making them. And all the other banks in the group were quietly sitting back, enjoying the free rider principle of making himself be out front and center and take all the hits, all the flack. It wasn't a good conversation. It didn't go well. The client complained. He said, you're not going to be in this deal unless you kick this guy off this deal and replace him with someone else. That's exactly what happened. And my fear is that this is where we've got to with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. I respect the guy. I think he's a courageous man. I think he's a noble man. I think he's a man of principles. I think he's fighting and doing his best for his people. But he handled this badly, and he should have been prepared much better for it. You saw masterclass in diplomacy from Macron and Starmer just days before. All of that's been completely scuppered and ruined by this. My question is pretty direct, and I say it more in sorrow than in anger. Does Zelensky have to stand down for a Russia-Ukraine peace deal to be secure?